Hello, hello. Okay, closing down windows and making sure I've got everything closed out that could affect our bandwidth. So hi, everybody. Welcome to Coffee and Conversations with Carmen. I should call it Coffee and Tea with Carmen because I don't always drink coffee at this time of the day. But today we are talking about boundaries. It's one of my absolute favorite topics. I just want to give everybody a heads up. I do have a child home. We are closed. Our schools are closed for flooding today. So if there's noise in the background, someone cooking or whatever, apologize for that ahead of time. But we also have a very interesting, we've got a lot of new people signing up for these and a lot of people watching the replays. So welcome to anyone who is new to me. I'm the founder of the Institute for Functional Health Coaching, Carmen Hunter Health, and the Health Coach Mentorship and Mastery. My passion is to educate and teach people in the health and wellness space how to have a successful business by authentically being yourselves and getting back to the basics of what it means to really help people. So one of the reasons why I want to talk about boundaries is, first of all, because everyone needs to have them and we should all be very familiar with what they are in our personal lives and our business. And the other reason is this, is because every time that I do a training, anytime that I do a coaching, anytime I'm doing one-on-one mentoring or I'm going live, the topic of boundaries enters either into my mind or in the conversation, or is shown to me the lack of boundaries that someone has that's affecting their personal life or their business. It is that big of a topic. So what I would love to hear from you guys today, or if you're on the replay, happy to get feedback on the Clarity group as well about what boundaries are. Do you understand boundaries, or is this a new topic to you? So tell me in the chat if boundaries is something that you're familiar with. Just give me some conversation about what it means to you to have boundaries. And I'm going to do a little bit of definition about it. But the main conversation today is going to be about, how important they are, how they can sabotage your business, how it can be affecting your relationships, and so on and so forth. Because as I believe, for those of you who know me, that everything that happens in your personal life is going to be reflected in your business. So we've got to clean up the personal stuff. Along with the growth of our business, we have to be working continually on ourselves, our personal relationships, how we're showing up in the world, all of those things. It's only going to make you a better practitioner or a better coach. So hold on a moment. Let me just make sure I've got the right page pulled up. So again, please tell me in the chat, do you know what boundaries are? Do you practice them? Is this a whole new idea for you? Because I think that what I'm about to share with you guys, and hopefully, if you have questions, you're going to ask them in the Q&A, but hi, Stan. Hopefully you'll see just how important it really is to be a healthy individual. You've got to have boundaries in your life. Okay, so I'm going to jump in right now and just tell you that I'll be sharing resources with you guys. And if you're on the replay, I'm gonna plug these in also in the replay when we send this out. So basically, hold on a moment, and I'll do just a real quick reading about what boundaries are. And again, the definition can depend on what you're looking at them for. You're looking at them for your business or your personal life, your relationships, your intimate relationships, your family relationships. But basically, a boundary, very simply put, is a personal property line that marks those things for which we are responsible. But in other words, boundaries define who we are and who we are not. Okay. Now, we think about boundaries in the terms many times of a physical boundary, things that we don't cross or we do cross or whatever in a physical sense, right? A wall or a fence or something like that, things that keep us in. Hi, you guys. Oh, good. Thank you for sharing. Hi, Gina. Hi, Casey. Yes. And the thing is I'm going to teach you today. I'm going to teach you a lot. And it's the tip of the iceberg. And I say this because boundaries is something, and I'm full disclosure and transparency at always. I had absolutely no boundaries for so many years. I was never shown boundaries. I was never taught about them. I was never explained why they're so important to me in my personal life and my relationship. So boundaries are something that we learn in the family of origin that we are growing up in, right? And what that means is this. So I'm going to give you just a little bit of an example of what a boundarylessness is. So not having boundaries shows up as codependency. It shows up as relationships that have, attachment disorders, like one person who's insecure in an attachment and one who's, maybe dismissive, avoidant, running the other way. That's another training I'm gonna work on. But I do talk about attachment when I talk about boundaries as well. So if you hear some of that language, you know, we're gonna get into another training on that eventually. But when you don't have boundaries, you end up doing things for other people that you don't want to do, saying yes to the things that you prefer to say no to, spending time with people that you'd rather not spend time with. Basically, you could be, you know, seen as a people pleaser, someone who is overextending themselves for other people to the detriment of their own health or their own business or their own families, right? The person who is trying to do everything to get approval and validation from the world outside of them instead of the world inside of them. So when we don't have boundaries, how that sets us up for, you know, relationship problems and ineffectiveness in our business or whatever, is just go back to what I just said. It has you doing things that you otherwise would not do, right? Things that don't feel right to you or don't resonate with you. And an example of that might be something like this. Let's say that we're working with a client, and let's say that client knows we've set up ahead of time. This will be a 1 hour session. We're going to do a 60-minute session. We're going to go over your intake form together. At the end of that 60 minutes, I'm going to tell you what to expect next from this relationship. Here's what a boundary break looks like in a client relationship like this. So the client, we get towards the end of the session, and we say to the client, okay, we've got about 5 minutes left. Let's just recap all of the things that we've talked about, right? Here's the boundary breaker. Client says, oh, okay, well, just one more thing, okay? Just hold on one more second. I have one other thing I want to ask about. Oh, and then, oh, I wanted to ask you about my husband's this thing too, right? Next thing we know, that hour has turned into an hour and 10, an hour and 15, hour and 20, hour and 30. So how it breaks boundaries in our business is that it goes past what we've set for ourselves and what's best for our business. Now, how do you know that you don't have a boundary is that you allow that client to continue to keep you in that session past the time that you're paid to be in it. Okay. So repeating that again, and I'm going to look at comments in just a moment in the chat here, but let me continue here. So a boundary, when you're breaking your own boundaries, you're allowing the client to continue to pick at your brain and go over the amount of time that you've been paid to use. That client is breaking boundaries by expecting you to be that person that continues to answer those questions. A boundaryless client relationship creates an ineffective business model. Okay, does this make sense, you guys? Is this okay? So another way that boundaries are broken. So let's talk about personal boundaries. So personal boundaries are where we should all begin, right? It's what makes us stronger, you know, in our relationship with our clients to set those boundaries. It gives us the confidence because we know that we can stand up for ourselves personally. We then carry that boundary into our business. Okay. So again, I used to have absolutely no boundaries. My boundaryless behaviors showed up as people pleasing, seeking validation outside of myself, eventually codependence in my marriage, which, you know, was just adding to the perfect storm to end the marriage. And so it looked like this. Let's just say that, you know, my spouse comes home, and this isn't really an accurate depiction, but it's an idea. Spouse comes home and says, you know, we need to go out to eat tonight. Okay. Let's go out to eat tonight. I want to go out to eat. My friends or my business partners or whatever want to go out to eat with us. And let's say I cooked a big meal and I'd spent the day cooking this beautiful Whole Foods meal. Hi, honey. Hey, babe. And so let's just say that I had all the dinner ready and I had everything laid out, and the suggestion came in that we should go to dinner. Me breaking the boundary of my own boundary would say, okay, let's go, right? Okay, honoring my boundary would say, listen, I made all of this food. I've spent the day in the kitchen. You didn't prepare me for this. You didn't ask me ahead of time. So I am going to suggest that we stay home tonight and make that for another date, right? That's me honoring the boundary, that the fact that I have invested time, effort, and energy into feeding our family. And this is, again, just an example. It's not an exact example that happened in my marriage, but it's a good one. And let's say that person came in and suggested something else. So I would be dishonoring my boundary by saying, okay, let me put all this food away, knowing that what I really wanted to do was stay home. Does this make sense to you guys? So give me feedback as I'm talking. If you need me to go elaborate on these things even further, I will. But what it is it's dishonoring ourselves at the expense of ourselves to please other people, to make other things right, to quiet the noise other people might make if we don't agree, right? Okay, so another boundary breaker when it comes, I'm going to go to something to read to you guys in just a moment, but another boundary breaker that happens is in business is, let's say that we have a collaboration, that someone wants to collaborate with us, and we want to do, let's say we're partnering or collaborating with another coach, and we're going to do a webinar. And let's just say that that person is kind of a, maybe a more assertive person, and they're pushing on us to do this and this and this. And let's say that doesn't resonate for your business, and that's not how you want to present yourself, but you go ahead and do it anyway because the exposure will be good. This person's taking charge. You just don't want to rock the boat, right? That's boundary breaking. Instead of saying, listen, that doesn't resonate for my audience or how I feel I want to present myself in my business. Can we talk a little bit more about how I might be able to bring my own unique, authentic self into this to complement what you're offering, right? That is honoring your boundaries, speaking up for yourself, standing up for what is right or feels good to you, and isn't at the expense or the detriment of your business or yourself, right? So many times what's happening is when we do this boundary breaking, or we don't set up boundaries, we end up overextending ourselves, spending money where we shouldn't. Again, spending time with people that we shouldn't. And this is another thing, that I have done in the past is to spend time working on specific things for my business because I didn't want to say to people, that's not something that I think my audience would like, or no, that doesn't really fit in for me. It was me going, okay, I really like this person as a person. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and do it anyway, instead of saying that doesn't work for me. Okay. So yeah. Okay. Let me go over here to the chat real quick and just see. Yeah. Still learning about boundaries coming from a highly dysfunctional background. Thank you, Margaret. Let me say this too, is that, unfortunately or fortunately, right? Years and years of not having boundaries. Do we all remember, and when I say we all, some people are much younger than me here. I'm 49 years old. But I was, born in the 70s, raised in the 70s and 80s. And I remember the era of codependency. I remember when Melody Beattie wrote her book. I remember, watching the women in my life around me, always people pleasing and being the person who hosted and made the meals and took care of people and all of these things. And also they were exhausted and they were emotional, and their husbands were alcoholics or workaholics or people who cheated or sex addicts or whatever. And the women were the ones that were over here making sure that everything went well and everyone was taken care of. Well, guess what happens when we are exposed to that kind of dysfunction? We then see that as normal, right? Tell me if this is any of you, because this is me. And I'm not sitting here, and again, I'm not about blaming the parents. It's how they were raised and nurtured themselves. It's what they learned from their parents. Boundaries were foreign to me because I didn't see them. I didn't understand what it meant to protect myself with boundaries. I didn't know that they were important to my well-being and my health until probably 4 years ago, to be honest with you, when I was 45 and everything started to fall apart around me in my personal life. And I noticed that it was causing me not to feel good. My adrenals were taking a hit. My thyroid was slowing down. I felt stretched and pulled in 10,000 directions, and I was allowing myself to be pulled and stretched in 10,000 directions instead of saying, no, this doesn't work for me, right? We have to understand that how we were raised and the things that we learned are the things that shape us today and how we relate to others. Now, I put a post up yesterday or the day before, I can't remember, I think it was yesterday, about the fact that how we learn to relate to other people in relationship is directly correlated with how we were attached to our mother. Okay. This is all important stuff, you guys, because it affects how we show up and what our confidence is like in our businesses and how we present ourselves to our clients. Not only that, but it also shows us a very large part and piece of why our clients may not be getting well with all of this standard conventional stuff that we're teaching them or showing them. We can give them, the most thorough liver cleanse. We can give them the deepest dive into an elimination diet. We can give them the autoimmune protocol or the Whole30. We can show them how to exercise, all of that stuff, right? But if they have this deeply ingrained belief that they have to say yes to every single thing and every person, and they have to show up as this perfect spouse or wife, And they have to be the mother that cuts the squares into, or the sandwiches into stars. And they have to be the one that makes homemade cookies instead of buying them, right? There are boundaries being broken on every level, and on every level. If they don't understand that part of how they were raised and how they're showing up in the world is part of how they are creating ill health for themselves, doesn't matter what cleanse you put them on, or how many times they do the Whole30, or how much CrossFit they do, or anything. They're not going to get to the deep-seated reason why their body keeps creating dis-ease, right? So dis-ease goes right along with not setting boundaries. We become uneasy in our bodies, in our lives. If we don't have boundaries, we become uneasy, but we don't know why. And that shows up as dis-ease, right? Okay, so going over here. Let's see here. Totally me, Casey says, yes. Oh gosh, me too. Sister, me too. My PhD is in people pleasing. Just ask any of my many BA therapists. I know. But you know what, you guys, the thing is there's, this is what I like to believe. I don't ever look back and go, oh, I wish I'd this. Oh my God, why didn't I that? Or I wish I that. I might say it, but then I immediately go, why? Why would you wish for anything to be any different? Because how we were taught and what we learned and how we showed up and how we are is part of what brings us to this very moment today, where we're learning that some of those old behaviors and things that we used to do and things that could be sabotaging us now in our lives and in our business brought us to this moment where we can learn how to undo that. I feel like it should be a liberating thing, right? Is this Wendy? I think it says Wendy. I never can see the whole name. Yes, I didn't know anything about boundaries until quite recently, and I didn't realize that people pleasing can be tied to that. Valuable information, isn't it? Because here's what happens. Let's stick with the people pleasing thing for a moment. And that can go really hand in hand with perfectionism. So when we're in our business and we're setting our business up, let's just pretend, let's set this up as a business approach, okay? So we're excited about the fact that we have all of this knowledge from all of the things that we've learned about health and wellness and disease and all of those things. We want to help people so badly. How this can look and show up in a dysfunctional way in your business is that someone may contact you and say, I heard that you are a health coach. I'd like to talk to you about how you may be able to help me and my husband, clean up our food and all of that stuff. A boundary breaker, not having a boundary up around your business looks like this. Oh yes, absolutely. Let's do that. And they're like, okay, great. And they start picking your brain right there. Maybe you're at the grocery store, or maybe they text you and they ask, can I just ask you one thing? And next thing you know, you're in a texting thing for an hour solving problems. That is having no boundaries. Okay. We call those people brain pickers. They come in and they want to just pick your brain and get everything for free. And the part where you don't have any boundaries is that you allow that to happen. Putting up a boundary looks like this. I would absolutely love to talk to you and your husband about how we can optimize your health. Here is my scheduling link, or if you're new and you don't have a scheduling program, here is my email. Let's set up a time for us to do a 15 to 20 minute discovery call and see how we might be able to work together. That's setting a boundary for your business. So what happens if you don't do that? Again, you end up on the phone or texting for an hour or stuck in the grocery store answering questions. You don't make an income. You're wasting time. You're showing the world that you do this for free, as I coined the term health coach hobbyist, right? You are not a hobbyist. You are a health coach, which is a valid career and profession that you deserve to be paid for. Okay. So let's just use this as an example. So going into, let's say we go into, let me think of something besides, I always use the car oil change, haircut idea, but this just keeps coming to me. But let's just say you go into an urgent care clinic because you've got a sore throat. When you walk in there, do you go up to the counter and say, I've got a sore throat and I need an excuse for work or whatever. And I'd like you I don't want to sign in or anything. And I really don't want to actually pay to see the doctor, but I'd like to just ask you if you could look at my throat and tell me if you see that there could be any reason to go into the doctor. And maybe you could actually give me some tips and hints about how I might be able to get a note without actually having to see that. Like standing there asking for questions to be answered, taking someone's time, picking their brain, but not actually being willing to invest in the real answer that you need for a sore throat. I know it's a crazy example, but still, because we probably wouldn't go to the doctor for just a sore throat. But my point is this: when you allow people to do that to you, you have no boundary set up for yourself or your business. In other words, how are you going to turn that person into a client? is that person going to say, yeah, just reach out to Wendy and you can just ask her anything. She'll stay on text forever. She was so helpful for me the other day, right? So then that starts that snowball effect of everyone thinking that this is just a hobby and you don't deserve to be paid for it. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Right. And a friend already tried to pick my brain at the gym. Yeah. And those doctors want those appointments to make you money. Absolutely. So here's the thing. When people do approach us and, we're out in public or whatever, this is a perfect example, Gina. Thank you for sharing. Let's say you're at the gym. That's your time. Okay. You go to the gym to take care of yourself and give yourself self-care and time alone. Someone comes up to you and says, hey, I heard you're a health coach. This happened to me at CrossFit all the time. Hold on, I got to get a drink here. This happened to me all the time at CrossFit. I'd literally be putting my stuff on, trying to get out the door, and someone would say, okay, you remember that time that you were talking at that nutrition class about 2 years ago and you were telling us about the thyroid? Well, I think I might have thyroid problems. Can I just take a minute to ask you a question? So me not having a boundary looks like this. Yes, I remember that class. Yeah. So what's the problem? So what's going on? What are your symptoms? I notice your eyebrows are thinning on the outside. So have you been having trouble losing weight? I engage in a conversation. The next thing I know, 30, 45 minutes goes by. I'm not out the door. The other class has started. I'm running behind. A boundary looks like this. Yeah, I remember that class. Yeah. And since then I've written a book. It's 52 pages about the endocrine system and the thyroid. Here's my card. I always kept cards in my bag after all of that happened repeatedly. Send me an email and I'd be happy to give you information about how you can purchase the book. That's it. That's a boundary. That's me getting out the door within 60 seconds time, giving them a call to action, holding them accountable to care for themselves and seek out my help as opposed to picking my brain and getting free information. Okay. It honored my schedule. It honored me. I was there for myself. I didn't let them come in and impinge on my personal time with business related topics and potentially made a client down the road. Right. So when we handle things in a way that breaks our boundaries, we lose so much opportunity for growth, for business growth, for potential clients, for extra time that we may need to care for ourselves. Allowing business to come into that self-care time is also one of those things that's a boundary crosser. Okay, so let me touch on something real quick here. And I'm going to ask you a couple of questions. I'm just going to throw this out here. Here are some signs that you have issues with boundaries in relationships, okay? So you might have a boundary issue if, do you ever feel like people take advantage of you or use your emotions for their own gain? Do you ever feel like you're constantly having to save people or rescue them close to you and fix their problems all the time? Do you find yourself sucked into pointless fighting or debating regularly? Do you find yourself far more invested or attracted to a person than you should be for how long you've actually known them? For those of you who are single, pay attention to that one. In your relationships, does it feel like you're always either amazing or horrible with no in between? Or perhaps you can go up through the breakup reunion pattern every few months, boundary breaking hands down. Do you tell people how much you hate drama, but you always get stuck in the middle? And do you find yourself a lot of time defending yourself for things that you don't believe are your fault? Okay, those are good questions for boundaries in relationships. If you answered yes to even 2 of those things above, you probably have some boundary stuff going on. So, and I'll share this link for you guys in just a moment, but think about it like this. Healthy personal boundaries, again, is taking responsibility for your own actions and emotions while not taking responsibility for the actions and emotions of others. Now, if I repeat, this is probably going to be something that sounds really familiar to some of you who are my students or in my membership group, because I like to use the fence as the fence and staying in your yard is a good example of how we can visualize how to stay in our own lane when it comes to boundaries and what we're responsible for and what we're not responsible for and how it truly affects our health and well-being. So let's use the example of the client, and let's pretend that, the client is our next door neighbor. Okay. And let's pretend, yeah, and I'm seeing yes, that many of those in a previous marriage, Megan is saying yes, and Gina's saying that's me, of course. And there's so many of those things that were me. It's like, oh my God, why didn't somebody show me this earlier, right? Okay, so let's say the neighbor next door is, let's say that's a client that has, and they're sitting on their porch, and I like to use the overweight beer drinking man in the white wife beater shirt. Okay. No offense to anybody. If that offends anyone, I'm sorry, but that's just the visual I get in my head. He's sitting in his lawn chair that's falling apart. His yard is full of weeds, and he's drinking a beer and he's looking out at that yard and he's doing nothing about it. Now think about the yard as all of the problems this person has: health problems, relationship problems. Every single weed that's overgrown over there are their problems, their health conditions, cholesterol, like you name it. They're sitting on that chair and they're looking at all their problems in that yard. Okay. And maybe they have a rusty old mower over there, maybe some old skills and tools they used to use to mow that lawn. Okay. Then there's you next door. Okay. And you've got this beautiful green, mowed yard with flowers, very few weeds, because you've done the work. Let's say that beautiful shiny lawnmower you have is all of the tools that you've developed over time, your knowledge, the research you've done, the work you've done to get well, all of the things that you've put into practice to keep those weeds down in your own yard. Boundary breaking looks like this. You look over there, okay, and you see this and you're like, oh God, I know I could help him. I know I could help him. I could help that guy. I could take my shiny mower, in other words, my liver cleanses, elimination diets, all the work I've done on boundaries or attachment. The mower represents all the stuff that you put your work into. And you could say to yourself, I could go over there in just one quick swoop. I could go over there and just mow down all those weeds, right? Okay, so what happens when you do that? You take all of your knowledge and you jump that fence and you go over there and you take care of all those weeds for that person. Is not only are you crossing a boundary because you didn't say, hey, would you like some help and support? But you've jumped over and you fixed all the problems. And what that did for that particular client was left them sitting there in a broken chair, drinking beer, letting someone else take care of their stuff, okay? And in the meantime, while you're over there taking care of them, some little weeds start to grow over here because you've broken your own boundary of caring for yourself and letting someone else care for themselves. Does that make sense? And I know it's kind of a crazy analogy, but it's the way that I see it is when we work so hard on ourselves, our personal growth, our health, all of the things that we're doing, meditation, walking, kinesiology, whatever it is that's in your toolbox for this. And we take those tools and we use them on someone else, that breaks that person's boundary and it breaks your own, because then your self-care goes on the back burner, and you're not allowing them to do the work for themselves. Okay. It doesn't fix anything for them, and it starts you going backwards. So what we want to do is next time someone comes to us, let's just say they want you to fix this and do that for them. And you go ahead and you're like, oh, okay, all right, I've got an extra hour. I could be doing this for myself, but I'm going to do that for them. Just remember this: you're breaking a boundary for yourself and you're crossing a boundary for them, and it's not serving them. This is why when people say that they have a problem accepting money for health coaching, it just blows me away. I remember when I had the same little issue, this was years ago, I wanted to help everyone and I didn't want it to charge and all that. I quickly learned that that wasn't serving me and it wasn't serving them. So many people have problems accepting pay because they have poor or leaky boundaries, right? And you'll hear this also as you start to learn more about boundaries. I'm going to share again resources in a moment, but think about the boat. Think about a boat that has holes in it. Leaky boundaries means that you're just sitting in that boat and you're just sinking. When you start to plug those things with the words, no, that doesn't work for me. I'm not okay with that. No, thank you, but that doesn't resonate for me. When you're able to start saying no and speak up for yourself, not in a way that hurts someone else, right? Or judges someone else, but that honors you, you're starting to plug the holes in that leaky boundary boat and starting to rise to the surface to support yourself. Okay. All right. So let me go into another thing here. Let's talk about boundaries in business. So I'm going to grab this link, why the guide to strong boundaries in personal relationships. This is just kind of an example, but real quick, here's another thing about relationships and two types of people who end up in relationships together. Here's some examples of poor boundaries. You can't go out with your friends without me. You know how jealous I get. You have to stay home with me. Or here's another one. Let's see here. My coworkers are idiots. I'm always late to meetings because I have to tell them how to do their jobs, right? I'd love to take that job in Milwaukee, but my mother would never forgive me for moving so far away. How many people are really attached to their family, their nuclear family of origin, and living their lives for them? At our age, we should be living our lives for ourselves. First and foremost, setting boundaries. If our moms or dads have problems with that, that's not our problem, that's theirs. Here's another one. I can date you, but can you not tell my friend Cindy? She gets really jealous when I have a boyfriend and she doesn't, right? Okay, so I'm going to copy and paste this. This is just a really nice short, boundary article, but I'm going to, there's a book, actually there's a series of books by Cloud and Townsend. I'm going to share those with you guys in just a moment. But yeah, again, so let's see, let's look at this. Lori's saying, I'm dealing with this right now. My best friend was just a victim of domestic violence and had to leave her husband. So many dynamics, and I've had to make myself stop helping. This is a journey she has to go through on herself. I can listen and support, but I cannot do for her, right? Feel free to refer her to me, Lori. I coach people in this situation, women of domestic abuse and betrayal and infidelity. I definitely have skill in that area. So that's what I do, a lot of coaching around that. So you feel free to refer her if you feel like it. But I'm glad that you're seeing that this is not something that you can do anything about, right? And here's the other thing that this is a good example, because this is what I see a lot of, friends that come in and they've got all kinds of things going on, lots of problems or whatever. And we feel like we're being a good friend. And I'm not saying Lori's doing this because she's a shining example of having boundaries here. But then we have that person who says, oh, well, just do this or just do this, instead of sharing an experience and saying, I understand and empathize, and sharing ideas and suggestions on things they might want to look into. It's more of they're telling people what to do, right? People who don't have boundaries tell other people how to handle their own personal relationships. That's boundary crossing. The friend that continues to come to that friend for advice and asking them to fix things and do all of that, they don't have good boundaries either. They have no confidence in their own intuition and decisions for themselves. So we see a lot of boundary breaking with domestic violence, with betrayal and infidelity, with addictions, with relationships that fall apart. There's usually, I want to say almost 100% of the time, a lack of knowledge about boundaries, or maybe one person understands them and the other person takes it personally and does not. And there's a pull apart dynamic, kind of a tug of war situation going on there in those relationships. And a lot of that has to do with attachment trauma and things like that. Okay. Boundaries in your business, why they're important. And I'll share this one with you as well. But so along with the lack of confidence and fear that I see with health coaches, comes the signs again that they don't have any boundaries in their business. They're fearful of setting boundaries because they're afraid that if they set a boundary, for example, I only take in clients on Mondays and Wednesdays. I'm off on Fridays. And let's say someone says, oh, but I wanted to talk to you on Friday. It's the only day that I can. The coach that doesn't have boundaries or doesn't, understand to be protective of their business might say, okay, well, I'll open up Friday for you. They put their family plans on hold, or the plans they had with their kid, just to take that call for that client who says Friday's my only best day, right? That's disrupting their life. That to the detriment of their life, they're serving someone else. Whereas they might say, oh, I'm really sorry, but Mondays and Wednesdays are the days that I do an intake for clients. So here are the times that are available next Monday and Wednesday. I hope to see you at one of those times. That's a firm boundary, okay? So here are some scenarios where you might not have strong business boundaries. You feel pulled in a million different directions and overwhelmed with everything on your list. That was me. Your clients constantly ping you outside of work hours or request work above and beyond your capacity. So that was just an example I just gave you. You spend so much time fielding client requests, you don't have time to work on your big projects. Another good example here, because I cannot tell you how many times I have mentored people who keep telling me, but if I don't take that call, they may not sign up with me. But if I don't talk to this person or do this or show up here or do this, then they may not sign up with me. So my thing is this: if you have a firm schedule, and these are the days that you work with clients, or these are the days that you do your live talks, or these are the days that you hold classes or webinars, right? Then all of the time around that set schedule is the time that you work on content or your big plans or your big presentation or your program or whatever it is that you want to create for that outlet, right? That creative outlet you're trying to, maybe you're a blogger and you love to write. When you start working outside of your boundaries, that's going to impinge on the things that you love to do, or that can eventually grow your business. So continuing, saying yes to requests and invitation because it feels easier to do them than to say no. So if it feels easier to say yes to you, if it feels easier for you to say yes to whatever in your personal life or your business, then you've got a boundary issue. Because you know what? Sometimes saying no is hard, but it's right. So I've got a good friend and I love her more than you can possibly imagine. She's been a dear friend of mine for over 16 years now. She can't say no. She can't say no at all, ever. It is like, she's like, you know how I like to people please. Yes, I absolutely do. I also see that you have high blood pressure. You're overweight by about 60 pounds. You eat sugar to soothe on a minutely basis, right? There's a person who can make an entire batch of cookies and eat the whole thing. And I'm talking about the old Nestle Toll House ones where you get 60 cookies out of one package of chocolate chips, right? Y'all remember that? She absolutely has more health and relationship problems than most of the friends I have combined, because she can't say no. And she's in psychology. She's a psychologist too, you guys. So don't think that just because someone has all this mental health knowledge that they understand this kind of stuff, right? Okay, here's another couple things. You feel increasingly resentful of others for their demands on your time. You feel run ragged, tired, and exhausted, and never have time for yourself. If you answered yes to any of those statements, you could definitely benefit from establishing stronger boundaries in your business. Now, this is what happens when you have strong boundaries in your business and in your personal life too. You feel empowered and in charge of your day, and might I insert your life, your business, your activities, your tasks, your duties. You create freedom to do more of what you love and less of what you don't. Again, let's think about it. So when I was working my head off, and I was just feeling like I was spinning my wheels, I had a wait list of clients. I was like, oh my gosh, I have to take everyone. I remember thinking to myself, I can't keep this up. So I stopped working on Fridays. And I remember a specific client that was like, well, Fridays is the only day that I have off. And it was only time I was going to be able to meet you. This is when I was doing in-person meetings at coffee shops. And I said, I'm really sorry, but I've decided to give myself a 3-day weekend. It is imperative that I do that, for my health and well-being, for my kid, because my kid was getting out of preschool early on those days or something. I can't remember the exact dynamics of it, but I wanted Fridays off, and it was imperative that I have them. And so I remember saying to her, I'm really sorry, and I understand if we can't work together, but that's my schedule. She miraculously found time on a weekday that I was working to be able to work with me. So accommodating myself first instead of accommodating someone else was so empowering. I remember thinking to myself, oh my God, I just said no. It was like it was like a Christmas present to myself, you guys. It was a feeling that I cannot explain to you, but what it was empowerment. I was empowered because I felt like I was standing up for myself and what was right. And that was a boundary that I put into place, right? So when you have strong boundaries, you strengthen your relationships because the guidelines are established. And here's the other thing that you do. When you set boundaries and you know what those are, you teach your clients to do the same thing. So you're speaking to the woman that's being, that might be in a relationship that's violating her personal freedom or growth or her boundaries, right? You know what it means to talk to her about boundaries because you're working on setting those up for yourself. That in turn gives her the empowerment that she needs to speak for herself, right? This could be like the person, a client that I had and I love to talk about her because she's such a success story. Had major Crohn's, right? She had Crohn's and her husband kept bringing in those toaster strudels. Oh my God. When I looked in her freezer, I thought, what is happening in here? She had thousands of dollars of powders and proteins and pills and supplements on the table. I can't even tell you how many labs she'd had done, the doctors she'd seen. And we went over the intake form, which those of you who are my students know, it's 20-something pages long. I knew so much about this woman. And I said to myself, one of the questions in there was, is your relationship being sabotaged by someone in your life? I can't remember exactly what it says, but is your relationship being sabotaged? Is that person you, right? And she had put on there, my husband. And she said, he brings home toaster strudels when he knows that I'm trying to behave myself. He cooks my favorite meal that's loaded with all the foods I can't have. He's breaking boundaries for her. And instead of her standing up for herself, where she should have said, listen, I appreciate, the fact that you aren't on the same journey that I'm on, but this is really hurting my efforts at getting well. Instead of saying that, she allowed that to continue and come in. And then she ended up eating the dinners and eating the strudels, sabotaging herself at the same time he was doing that to her. So we talked about that. And I gave her some skills and tools to be able to stand up for herself and say, listen, I don't expect you to do what I do, but you're my partner in this life, right? And I need your support. So what would make it easier for me is if you would make those meals when I'm not here or when I'm not, when I've already had my own healthy meal, and you would stop, putting those favorite strudels of mine in the freezer, whatever it may be, standing up for herself, setting boundaries for the success of her health and her relationships. And, you know, he didn't really even see that he was doing that. He was just doing the day to day. This is what he was used to. He didn't know that it was hurting her. And she didn't realize that she was hurting herself by not standing up for herself. So again, when we establish those boundaries, we understand them and we do them for ourselves. We carry that into our business and we teach that to our clients. And what that does is it empowers them. It gives them the strength to stand up and make good decisions for themselves. And that alone, you guys, can reduce or, you know, change stress in a million different ways. Okay. Know your priorities, and you don't feel guilty about saying no to anything that isn't in alignment with him. Okay. Another fantastic thing here, you know, guilt. So here's the thing. Many of us will avoid saying no so that we don't have to feel the guilt of saying no. And that leads us to say, where's the guilt coming from? Who taught you you couldn't say no? And remember when we started this call, a couple people came in late, but do you remember when I started the call and I was telling you that we learn this stuff from our parents? We also learned the feelings that are associated with the behaviors from how we were raised. So if we're uncomfortable saying no, and we feel guilty about saying no, we need to go back and say, where did this come from? Where did I learn this? How can I undo this so that I can set firm boundaries and remove the feeling of guilt and shame that is not mine to own in this time of my life, right? Guilt and shame don't serve us, but boy, do we use it. We use it all the time to get out of setting boundaries, to get out of doing, standing up for ourselves because we're uncomfortable there. But if you're not comfortable saying no to anybody for anything, right? Even your kids, you got a boundary issue, 100% across the board. We have to be able to say no and feel good about that because that's what's good for us. Okay. Does that make sense? Am I giving you guys some stuff that makes sense here? Yeah. Wendy says, I love that, Carmen. If you set boundaries, you strengthen relationships. 100%. 100%. I mean, gosh, I don't even know, you know, I mean, I don't believe that I was supposed to stay in the marriage that I was in, or I would have been there. But if I'd had boundaries, maybe the end of the relationship would have been a lot healthier and different. And maybe we would have, again, more respect for each other and things like that. I mean, you know, as time goes on, and if you don't follow me on Instagram, feel free to go out and find me. The Full Circle Process is where I talk about, you know, the marriage, infidelity, betrayal dynamic that I went through and how boundaries affected me and the attachment system affected me and my relationships. And again, remember, you guys, if you have children and you're in relationships where you have no boundaries, you're teaching your kids the same thing. You're teaching your kids the same thing, which opens them up to not having boundaries in relationships with others, with friendships, making poor decisions, getting involved with the wrong people, maybe marrying the wrong person, not having boundaries in their business. Everything we do when it comes to boundaries and attachments in our personal lives that leads to our business, it shows our children how to navigate the world that they live in. All right. When you have strong boundaries, you confidently make decisions in the best interest of your business and yourself. And this is one of my favorite ones. You avoid entrepreneurial burnout by proactively finding time for yourself. Okay. So here are some suggestions. And I'm going to share this link with you guys too, about how to establish better boundaries with clients. Okay. This is going to be powerful stuff. Okay. All right, here we go. Here are 5 tactics to establish better boundaries with your clients. And I'll read the little bold on this, and I'll just kind of expand about it. But first, think about what you want. And this is something I teach. So one of the things I like to talk about to my students and people I work with is this. I want you to have a business that works for you and not one that you have to work so hard for. How we do that is we establish what works for me. What do I want in my business? Do I want Fridays off? I do. Then I need to work Monday through Thursday in a way that's efficient and effective so I can have my Fridays off. And what do I want for that Friday? I want no communication with clients, right? And I'm just going with what I did when I was health coaching and I was crazy busy and being pulled everywhere and had no boundaries. I wanted to make sure that I stood fast to that and true to myself. And for me, that meant really being honest with myself about the fact that I never had boundaries before that, and saying, this is what I want for myself. This is how I want my business to function. And when I did that and was able to freely go out, grab my kid and run to the park with the rest of the moms, you know, go up to Nashville and go to the zoo or whatever it was we decided to do for the day, I lost the guilt that was attached to that because it was something I decided to do for myself. So in order to communicate your guidelines to others, and I'm reading this, you first need to know what they are. Take the time to decide on your working hours, when and how, I just said, and how often clients can talk to you, what is included in your work with clients and what's outside the scope. Don't think about what you can do. but really think about what you want to do in your work. This is your business. You get to decide how to spend your time. I feel like I could have written this. This is the first time reading this part. I liked the beginning of it, but I never got into it. This is fantastic, right? So again, one more thing about that, you guys, is, you know, when you make this decision about how clients can talk to you, your business shouldn't be a free-for-all. It's not, unless you're getting paid for it. It shouldn't be, here's my phone number, text me anytime you need support. You know, if you go to the grocery store and you need to talk to me, call me. Feel free to call me. I'll help you read that label, unless you're getting paid for it. Now, there's a difference. Here's the difference. When people work one-on-one with me, with my health coaching, I charge significantly because I am allowing them to contact me Monday through Friday. They can send me a message on text. They can send me an email. They can request a call. And if I'm available, we can do a Zoom. So I charge for that time. When I'm doing one-on-one mentoring with my coaches, which is another piece of my business, I allow them to Voxer me, text me, email me. I'll hop on the phone with them. I'll Zoom with them within specified time frames and what works for me. Now, the reason why I'm okay with that is because I charge accordingly. If I didn't charge accordingly for that, that would be creating the bitterness we talked about a little bit earlier, and resentment that was impinging on my personal time. Okay. All right. So another tactic to set up vendor boundaries with your client: set up consequences if they breach the agreement. Okay. So here we go. This is another reason why I say have a cancellation fee. If a client doesn't show up for a call, doesn't pay the invoice, or requests work above and beyond what you do, then make sure that you set boundaries. You missed our planned time, or you did not cancel our appointment within a 48-hour time frame, you will receive a $50 charge on your credit card, or an invoice for $50, right? Have that policy in place. Make sure that they sign that client agreement. Make sure they understand a refund policy and stick to it. Of course, there's going to be times where you're like, oh, that person got sick and they couldn't make the appointment that morning. I mean, use your gut on this stuff, but if you have a blanket foundation for your business in place, this is going to help you establish those strong boundaries. All right. Second part of this is communicate those guidelines, make sure they sign off on them, have a client agreement or contract, what's expected from them. And for those of you who have my content, you know that I say that it's really important to have that what to expect from working with me agreement, so that they know that you're serious about committing to them, but they have to commit to themselves. Make sure they sign it, understand it, and you go over any questions they have before you continue. Commit to clear, open, direct conversations with clients and ask them to do the same. Oh my gosh. Oh boy, this is a good one. It's amazing how much stress can be caused, and I'm reading here. I don't want you guys to think this is my words on this one. How much stress can be caused by a simple misunderstanding or miscommunication. Agree with your client that you both address any issues or concerns up front. When you start the client relationship by honoring your boundaries, showing up on time, and doing what you agreed to, you model for your client what's expected. Super important here. One of the things that I find is that when we're people pleasers or perfectionists, mostly people pleasers, we bend a lot, right? We bend a lot. They may show up 15 minutes later or text you and say, oh my God, I forgot about our meeting. Can you hop on now? And we're like, okay, fine. And then we end up rearranging the rest of our day to fit into that 15 minutes that they screwed up the call, right? That's boundary breaking. Instead, we would say, yes, absolutely. I can hop on with you on our meeting, but we've already lost that 15 minutes of time, and I have a strict schedule with other people. So instead of the hour that we had, we'll have 45 minutes. That's boundary setting. That's clear communication about what to expect, setting those parameters so they don't try to step over them and abuse your boundary, right? Okay. All right. So another thing that you can do to establish better boundaries is say no to anyone or anything that doesn't fall into your current priorities. On a weekly and daily basis, get clear on your top priorities, turn down any requests that are not in alignment with them, and get comfortable saying, no, not at this time. And I'm going to talk in just a minute here about that. But one way to soften the blow and keep the relationship alive is to give people a reference, a tool, or even another person who may be able to help them. But here's the thing. Here's what I find, and I ran into this most recently. I get a lot of requests from people asking me to affiliate with their products and services and their programs, right? So I have always been the person that says, yes, we can do this interview. I'd love to bring you into my people. And you know, when I started interviewing people, gosh, it's been several years ago. We've got over 100 interviews, probably more than that if I add them up. But I was taking everybody. I was just interviewing everyone, bringing them in. to the detriment of my own growth and development for my business. So in the last year and a half, when people have reached out and said, will you please promote this, share this link, you can make money off of it. Even if it was something that I thought would be something that could put money in my pocket, if it didn't resonate for me or didn't fit into my schedule, I've had to start saying, no, I'm sorry, not at this time. We don't have the space on our schedule, or, our social media calendar is booked, or our expert webinars are booked for the next 3 months or whatever. Saying no to that to allow the space to create, the business that I want has been a new thing for me. But here's the other thing I want you guys to be really clear on. When you say no to someone, as you're getting, you're flexing that no muscle, which I think many people need to be doing, you don't have to explain yourself. This is a liberating thing. So if someone says to you, can you do that free talk for us at the local juice bar? And you can't do it, and you're tired of doing free talks, and you're not converting anyone at this local juice bar or whatever, you don't have to say, no, because no one ever signs up, or no, because I'm not getting anything from it, or no, it's not serving me. You can just say, no, I'm sorry, but I'm not going to be able to do that at this time, period. Too often we're forgetting about the statement of no, and we're adding on to it. No, it really doesn't work for me because blah, 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 and da, 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 and this, and this, and this, and so, and so, and so, right? So think about the time in your personal life where maybe, you've got a mother-in-law or someone that, someone you'd rather not hang out with or spend time with. And I'm using the in-law example because that's common, where, we don't mesh with our in-laws. But let's say that the mother-in-law says, well, I want you all to come to my house for dinner on Sunday night, and everyone's going to show up, and everyone's bringing a dish and all this. And it's just not something you want to do. You'd prefer to stay home on a quiet Sunday night and have a movie with your family. So the person who's afraid to say no, afraid to rock the boat, all of that stuff, might say, oh God, okay, we're going to come, we'll be there, right? No boundaries. The person that also may have leaky boundaries, like the boat that I was talking about earlier with the hole in it, might say, because, I really don't like, Uncle Bob, and, gosh, Cousin Sue gets on my nerves, and, really wanted to hang out with my family tonight. Well, that opens the door for that mother-in-law to come in and say, well, you don't have to sit by him, and you can ignore the cousin. And then the dialogue goes back and forth. And the next thing you know, you're making a meal and you're going anyway. And yes, absolutely. No is a complete sentence. Yes. Who said that originally? I've seen that before, and I've seen it on, people's feeds and all that, but it's absolutely true. No is a complete sentence. So no, thank you is a nicer way to say it, or not at this time, or I appreciate the offer, but I can't make it. Right. So some of these statements can be super powerful. And behind it, what I really truly find, and Margaret, you can probably share that, your experience with this is when you say, no, I'm sorry, that doesn't work for me today, or no, that won't work for me. There's this feeling of relief because you're stating what doesn't work for you, and you're not breaking that boundary or jumping over it by giving big, long explanations and justifying to get rid of the guilt that's usually surrounded by the no. So, I have to say that many times no comes with guilt, right? And when no comes with guilt, that's boundaries, right? That's a boundary issue. That means that you got a little leak in your boundary boat. But when no comes with no, thank you, not at this time. No, I appreciate the offer, but that won't work for me. That's plugging that hole in your boat, in your boundary boat, right? Okay. Wendy says, thank you for permission to say no. It does feel really good. You don't have to have a reason. It is very liberating, and it's permissive to yourself. And so when I talk about, we're getting up on the hour here, so please, any questions you guys have, let me know. But, one of the things I want you to keep in mind is, and when we teach ourselves how to have boundaries, and we share, that with our kids, and, mine's probably sitting up, there's mine. Wave, Brayden. There's my kid back there. And this is new to me too, you guys, sharing what boundaries means for him. He's 15 years old. He's in high school. There are leaky boat boundaries everywhere in high school because most of the time people aren't talking about this stuff in their homes. But something that I've had to learn in relationship with my son and being a single mom and raising him on my own is that I have broken many boundaries with him over time. And as I look back and I think about it, let me use one as an example. This is a great example. And let me know if this is something you guys have done or you've seen done, is, the little kid who, let's say, the little kid whose grandparents visit for the weekend or something like that. And oh my gosh, I see this when he was little. I had done this. And his dad repeatedly did this. And oh my gosh, his grandma, someone would come into town and and automatically the parents or the grandparents might say, oh, give your uncle so-and-so a hug. And the kid might go, no, I don't want to do that. Right. But instead we push them. No, you don't see him but once every 8 months. Go give him a hug. And the kid's like honoring their own boundary, right? They're like, I don't see this person very often. I don't want to go over hugging that person. That's uncomfortable for me. That's a kid that knows their boundaries. But what happens is when we don't have them, we push that thought and that idea and that belief onto them. And I mean, literally push them out of their own boundary into an unsafe place in their mind, or a place that doesn't feel good to them. And we teach them that it's not okay to have boundaries. Has this ever happened? You guys have to like surely you guys understand this or have seen this, right? You know, the grandma, oh, go give your grandma a kiss, you know, and she's sitting there and like, you know, arms out, and the kid's like, I don't want to do that. But no, we say, yeah, go do that, right? That's boundary breaking. Yeah. Linda says, I am that way now. I'm not a huggy person. I don't want to be forced. But how many times did this happen when we were children or when with our children, right? So, you know, if you've got kids, teaching them about boundaries can be so powerful for them in their lives right now and in their future as they grow. And I know my son is he gets tired of me with all the lessons, like, God, Mom, can't we just stop with all the lessons? But, you know, part of me is feeling this push because he's only here for another 3.5 years. I want him to go be firm on boundaries. I want him to understand attachment and security, and to be this person that has all the things that I didn't have growing up, so that he goes out into the world, you know, with a strong, firm foundation of who he is. And that validation comes from within, and he feels confident standing up for himself. So I will say that I have watched him grow over time and be able to establish those things for himself, and in very, very powerful ways in the last probably 1.5 years. So very proud of that about him. And yeah, and again, right, Linda, he needs to respect the boundaries of others. When he is, trust me when I tell you, the dating has already begun, even though he's not driving. I guess there's methods of dating that are different. I don't know. But anyway, yeah, we've talked about this repeatedly, that we have to respect boundaries, that most of the time we have to remember that the people that our kids are dating, spending time with, or whatever, they're not like health coaches that are diving into the mental health and the mind-body connection and what healthy relationships are like. So they're up against what we were raised with people who don't understand attachment. They don't know boundaries. They don't understand any of this stuff. So we get to make that shift and that change by teaching them and hoping that they carry forward with our children. So eventually all generations will have this. You know, a strong attachments and understanding where they came from and knowing how important boundaries are. So as a wrap up here, I'll say this, that, you know, I could talk about boundaries for days and days and days. And I've spent so much time, you know, studying them. Let me grab you guys a couple links before I forget. So much time studying them because it is imperative to my own health and well-being, and also my kid and my business and the relationship that I'm in and my friendships and all that, that I have the understanding that I need to honor theirs as much as I want them to honor mine as well, right? And the only way that we can do that is to get skilled in this. I'm going to share a resource for those of you who don't know about thrift books. So I've been talking about McKay's bookstores, right? If you've been on the coffee and conversations before, I've talked about McKay's bookstore, which is a local store. Not everybody has them, but it's like you walk in and you're like, oh my God, it's like used books and DVDs and CDs and equipment and all that stuff. If you don't have a McKay's, I'm sharing a link here. Hold on, let me paste it, for a place called, is this it? Hold on. Thrift Books. So that's a really long URL because that leads you to the book that I'm recommending by Cloud and Townsend on boundaries. So thriftbooks.com has used books, just as it says, thrift books. It looks like it's set up similar to Audible, kind of. But you can get books, I mean, cheap books. Now, the book by Cloud and Townsend, Basic Boundaries book, start there, okay? Now, if you've got teenagers or you're in a marriage that's struggling or whatever, there's boundaries on marriage. There's boundaries in business. There's boundaries with teenagers, boundaries with children, boundaries with friends, whatever. They've got a whole series of books written on boundaries, and I recommend Cloud and Townsend for all of that. Don't forget about resources of going out onto YouTube and watching videos about boundaries as well. I mean, all you gotta do is put boundaries in on YouTube and you're gonna get a million different videos on it. which is one of my favorite ways to learn, is listening to people do brief teachings on this kind of stuff. So let me share one other article. This is the article I was reading about the business. And that's by Solopreneur, that one I was reading from just now. So those are also great resources. So takeaways from today, you guys, is always, always be working on you in every capacity, understanding where you came from. Where did your beliefs come from? What made you develop into this person that's afraid to say no or lacks the confidence to build a business that you love, to say no in your marriage if it's not working out, to ask for what you need, to tell your kids that you're firm about specific things and teach them these types of things. Go back in your life and find out where the origin of your beliefs came from. Fix the problems from there, and then build your boundaries. And how I say to build them is to dig them deep, make them really, really long, and make them really, really high. So wide, high, and deep, and make them out of concrete so that no one can penetrate them once you put them into place, right? Because there's something that comes with this that I cannot express to you that gives you this sense of power in yourself, not power over others, power for yourself, gives you your power back if you've lost it through, years of abuse or marriage or lack of understanding. And it inspires you to continue to teach other people how to have these, to have a healthier life. So one of the best ingredients I can give you is to learn more about boundaries. We're going to talk about attachment theories and stuff on another call, because those are just as important. Oh my God. How we relate to other people is about how we formed attachment as children. So you're welcome, Casey. Yes. And you said you're doing, let me scroll up a minute and just make sure I didn't miss anything. You're doing the same thing with your kids now. Excellent. That's awesome. Yeah. And, I think that one at a time, just like we're teaching them about food, you guys, and GMOs and gluten and toxins and all of that, we need to be teaching them about the emotional health, and the emotional and mental health that is going to affect their health as they grow up. And if we start to spread the word about this unconventional health coaching, these unconventional health coaching topics, I think are so important. These are just important as talking to people about green smoothies, if not more important. Right? If we do that, think about the change that we can see in this world. Think about the shift people are going to have in their health. This is a functional health coaching approach. And if you're a student of mine, you know that I walk my walk with this, that I feel very strongly about the emotional and mental well-being of us as coaches to share with the world how we do this differently. Okay. And you're welcome, you guys. You're welcome. You're welcome. Okay. So if you're not in the Clarity group, Health Coach Clarity with Carmen Hunter, I'll grab the link. If you're not in there, come in there and join us. And then just as a side note, there is a training on the Health Coach Clarity, a 5-day training. If you're a student already, you don't need it. You guys have everything I do. You guys have access to. But yeah, so here we go on the Clarity group. If you're not in there, come join us on that. If you're interested on one-on-one mentorship for your personal life and your issues with boundaries, attachments, and personal growth, I do that as well. I also counsel women when it comes to getting their power back in their marriage or after separation or divorce. Of course you're allowed to join. Absolutely. But Casey, it's just some trainings. You're welcome to grab them if you want. Oh, you mean the group? Yeah. The Clarity group's just a free, wide open group. Anybody can come in. There's almost 5,000 people in there. Just hop in. It's free. But anyway, if you want to reach out to me for help on coaching to get fast forwarded on all this stuff, carmenhunterhealth@gmail.com. I don't believe in contracts or any of that kind of stuff. I believe in supporting you through the process until you don't need me anymore. And hopefully that's quick and fast, because I believe in fast forwarding to better health. So, okay, I think that's it. Grab the Clarity group, carmenhunterhealth@gmail if you're interested in mentorship. Have a fantastic rest of the day. Practice those boundaries. Say no at least twice today without explaining why, and put that practice hat on. Okay? Talk to you guys later. Thank you. Bye.